Dear viewer, if you have been watching the discussion on speaking scientific English, you will know that I have strong views on the subject. But do I follow these guidelines and these opinions when I speak myself? In this video, which contains excerpts of a lecture I gave on communicating science at the Medical University of Vienna, you can judge for yourself if I do as I say. We join the lecture as I begin to tell how to present scientific material in a different way. We can think about doing science like journalism. You are telling a story. You did something, it's the introduction. What did you do? What did you find out? Or what did you discover? And that is a scientific manuscript. HIV is a virus which causes the disease AIDS. We need more drugs to treat AIDS. Therefore, we investigated the properties of certain plant extracts to inactivate and stop the viral replication. We found one plant extract which stops in the test tube HIV replication, and we are investigating the potential of improving this molecule. That's it. I've just given you a scientific paper. In about 5 sentences in 2 minutes. It's not written down here. I did it from the top of my head. It says ad lib. It says talk freely about HIV. That's all it is. It's nothing special. No special rules. We can do it a different way. Again from journalism. Tell them what you are going to tell them. I'm going to tell you that we have decided, or we have set up some experiments with certain plant extracts to develop a male fertility pill. One of our extracts was able, in mice, to reduce the sperm count. With this extract, which is able to reduce the sperm count in mice, we believe that we have a potential compound to produce a male fertility pill. That's it. Nothing special. Logical steps. What did we do? Why did we do it? What did we find out? What does it mean? It's like a computer program. When we are writing science, we have 3 goals: clarity, brevity, and coherence. I hope that the 2 scientific manuscripts I gave you just now, I hope they showed clarity. Which word does clarity come from? Clear, thank you. Brevity? Brief. Coherent. Okay? Clarity, brevity, coherent. This is different to German-speaking articles. Attributes, we also need 3 attributes, 3 properties as a person for writing scientifically, for speaking scientifically. We need creativity. We need to be able to imagine. We need imagination. How could I write this differently? Because if you write something the first time, it will never be perfect. You have to correct it and improve it. So we have the take-home messages for the general part. Learn from your mistakes. If you give a scientific talk, don't ask your friend whether it was good or not. They will say, yeah, it was okay. Useless. Ask an enemy. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. And your enemy is then your best friend, because they have pointed out the holes, the problems, the pitfalls, the mistakes, the errors, the parts which were not logical, and you will improve. Learn to criticize yourself, suggest improvements yourself, and learn to accept criticism of others. The next part of the video concerns the scientific manuscript. What is its purpose? What are the key elements? Which parts will interest the reader most? How do I go about writing it? If you have been reading my book, you will know most of the ideas, but perhaps it will be of interest to see how I develop them during the lecture. And I would like to suggest to you an order of writing a scientific manuscript. As I said, You can take it or leave it, but this is how I do it. First, we need the components of a scientific manuscript. These are the sections of a typical scientific manuscript. Question: where to start? Any suggestions where to start? Who would start with methods? Who's not sure? Who's no idea? Who doesn't care? Any suggestions where to start? With the introduction. Anybody else for the introduction? 5 or 6 votes for the introduction. Any other suggestions?
Maybe before you could go through the literature and find references.
Okay. So introduction, references, good. Anything else?
I will start with the tables.
These down here?
Yes.
Yes, very good. You are a man of my mind. Okay? This is where I would start a scientific manuscript. Why? 2 reasons. Why do I write a scientific manuscript? Advance in knowledge. 3 reasons. Advance in knowledge is the first one. The figures and the tables, these are the advance in knowledge. This is what is new. This is what you want to communicate to the world. This makes your paper special. Second reason, typically you may have worked a year or 2 on this. This will have caused you agony. It will have caused your boyfriend or your girlfriend agony, because you go home in the evening at 10 o'clock crying and wailing and shouting about the equipment or your boss or the reagents or the project, because it's not working, it's not going in the right way, it's doing something different, and how are you going to get out of this mess? It's part of your life. It costs you energy. It costs you blood, sweat, and tears to do it. Why don't you start with this here? And the third reason for writing a scientific manuscript was given to me by a medical doctor, about the same age as me, and his answer was to enhance my career. In my way of doing it, don't start with the methods. Because first of all, it's boring, and secondly, you will get bogged down. And you can spend a month writing the methods and polishing and finding that vital reference from 1936, which was the basis of everything you're doing. But you haven't got anywhere. You just got tired and bored. Once you've written the figures, tables, and results, you do the materials and methods in an afternoon. Another way of thinking of it. I review manuscripts, I edit manuscripts, I get a lot of things on my desk or on my computer, my emails nowadays. Where do you think I start to read a manuscript? This is a no-brainer, this question. Where do you think I start to read a manuscript? Figures and tables, yes. If the figures and tables are good, I don't need to read the text. I don't read the text. I can tell immediately what's going on. All that time you spent writing that wonderful introduction never actually gets read. Okay? So, where to start? How do we make a little figure? Here is an idea I came up with. Here is a little bar chart, we call this in English. It's a very simple figure. It's an imaginary figure. It shows the inhibition of influenza virus by plant extracts. I came up with this idea in South Africa. These are South African plants. And in this experiment, number 2, this plant extract from aloe vera inhibits the replication of influenza virus. And that's it. It has a title. Every figure has a title. It tells me what it means. And I can understand this figure without any text. Important too, the error bars. The error bars. Always have error bars because it shows you have done something reproducibly. And science is all about reproduction. If you can't reproduce it, it's not science, it's magic. Or homeopathy. This is another. I don't want to get into dirty waters. If you look at a publication in a journal, there is not only a figure title, there is also a figure legend. And here, the figure legend tells you more about the experiment. 10 microliters of each extract were incubated with 10 million 10 to the 6 virus particles for 1 hour. In English, 10 to the 6. That's how we say that. Virus particles for 1 hour. The number of active virus particles remaining was then assayed or measured on HeLa cells. And to somebody who's familiar with viruses, this tells them exactly how good this inhibition is. If you can inhibit 90% of 10 to the 6 virus particles, that's not bad. How am I doing? Am I speaking loudly and clearly enough? Are my slides legible? In the discussion on speaking scientific English, I said that one reason for practicing was to see how long your lecture actually lasts. Another reason is to allow yourself to make mistakes and to learn from them. The next part of the lecture looks into this in more detail, and I try to take away the fear of making mistakes by pointing out that all organisms need mistakes for their survival. And this is a key thing about biology. Nothing is perfect. Evolution is not perfect. It just works. And this is the same for my lectures or your lectures. They just have to work. They don't have to be perfect. The same with writing. If you go for perfection, you will never finish anything. And if I look at males who have failed in science, it's either because they were too self-confident or they wanted perfection. If I look at females who failed in science, it was because they were not self-confident enough. Other mistakes? And I know these, you know these anyway, because you know this from people who stand here and lecture to you on various subjects. They talk too quickly, so you have no idea what they're talking about. You can't understand what they're talking about. You can't write it down. You can't think about it. It's a waste of time. And then there are others who speak so slowly that it's much easier to think about what you did at the weekend and have a little sleep, and maybe the next lecture will be a bit more lively. Get the correct speed right. Don't put too much detail on your slides. Don't give people too much detail. If you are talking to older scientists, they will know the basics. They want to know, what did you do? What is the advance? And don't go for illegible or overcooked visual aids. How often do you see red writing on a blue background? Or green on a yellow background and such things? You can't read it. This is blue on white. You can read it. It's dead boring, but you can read it. I am communicating. The best contrast is black on white. That's why all newspapers, except for the Standard, are black on white, because the contrast is the best. If you want people to read it, very good. And if you have too many nice designs, people think you have too much time on your hands. And you have not concentrated on the experiments, but on the artistic value. This is not communication. The list goes on. This is my favorite one. I'm sure you've seen this. Oops. No use of the pointer. So as you can see over here, there. I'm sure you see this quite often. Is it at the bottom? Is it at the top? What on earth is he waving at? And then there is abuse of the pointer. This is the disco king or the disco queen. We, as you can see here and here. Don't you see this quite often? Oh, I've forgotten something. End of the list. If you get the technique right, and that's for German or whatever, the grammar and what you actually say becomes less important. The pronunciation. The language problems are really at the list. Everything I've given you, you can do it if you're speaking scientific Chinese or whatever. It won't make any difference. Looking at the audience, using the pointer. A pointer is to point. I point at something, and that's it. Point. The English problems are at the end of the list. Now, this is a pretty strong statement. I'm a scientist, so what is the evidence? The observation that native English speakers can give terrible talks. Terrible talks. I have heard some completely awful talks by English people. Okay? So English proficiency is not the native skill. Especially English people have strong regional dialects. They don't understand that other people do not understand them. I came to Austria 30 years ago with a very strong Yorkshire dialect. This dialect has gone. I am not speaking like this. In my hometown, people ask me, why have you got a German accent now? Because I don't speak English like what the locals do. But if I speak like what the locals do, you won't understand the word I'm talking about. We now turn to the importance of speaking without reading from a text. How can I speak without notes and still maintain the required accuracy? How can I keep the order of slides in my mind without being confused? The lecture examines the solutions we gave in the discussion in more detail and shows you what my notes and my script look like. If you're not sure, practice. Practice in the tram. Nobody will notice in Vienna. All sorts of crazy people talking to themselves. Or all these handy chats going on. Nobody will notice. Have your talk in your head. If you've got 20 slides, it's quite easy. You know what comes if it's logical. Make your visual aids your own notes. You can put points on small cards. You may have seen people doing this. Just the key bullet points, 1 card per slide. It reminds you what to say. If you've got some big numbers, you want to get the numbers exactly right, and write them down on the card. Nobody will be upset if you look at your notes to say the concentration was 10.5 micromolar. That will not upset everybody. They will be happy that you got the number exactly right. If you forget and you say 100.5, this will be a really big mistake. Okay? Or you can make a script or a Drehbuch. And if you've been noticing, this is what I have here. Let's get one where it's useful. Here we are. This is part of my script. It's PowerPoint printed out as notes. You can write things on PowerPoint in notes, which you do not see. I print them out, I have them in front of me, and then I go through this here, and I write on this one what comes on the next slide. Because all I have to be to impress you is 1 slide ahead. All I have to do is to know what's on the next slide. And you think I know my stuff by heart. But this tells me here examples of mistakes, and on the next slide would be, I have to keep the order right, otherwise I will be in a mess next year. And down here on the next slide are the mistakes. And then the next slide down here. And occasionally it says make a joke or something like that. Yeah? Or be silly or something like that. Yeah? It's a Drehbuch. It's really a piece of theatre, nothing else. Dear viewer, I thank you for watching this video and hope that my ideas on speaking scientific English are clearer. In the final clip, you will see that despite my notes, my guidelines and my experience, I still managed to make a large blunder. Watch me dig myself into a hole and discuss and think for yourselves about my exit strategy. So, and the final slide for today is one which I encourage you to use as well. Often, you don't know when somebody has finished. Have they finished? Shall I clap? Have they not finished? And there's this awkward silence where the speaker stands there, the audience sits there, and nothing happens. Very embarrassing. If you're British, anything which is embarrassing, like kissing your wife in front of the whole world, is very embarrassing. Yeah. Then there's one way of getting around this piece of embarrassment. Sorry, not yet. We've got the final slide with, sorry, here we are. I'm not reading my notes, getting carried away. So it says here, what did I tell you? Communicating science important as doing the experiments, a skill which can be acquired, and you can actually enjoy doing it. A horror of horrors, you can enjoy telling people. And if you listen to the best speakers, they actually do enjoy telling you something. It's not a chore, it's not a pain in the bum, it's fun. So, and here is the real final slide. This is the default final slide. It tells you, everybody, that you finished. Thank you for your attention. I wish you luck with your speaking and your writing. Thank you.